The entire global economy is in designed free fall. The globalists, George Soros, all of them are saying, give the private banking dictatorship that engineered all this total power. End Europe, set up a European Union football team, no more national sovereignty of any level. Pay us everything, slash everything, raise taxes, cut entitlements, or you're going to have a global depression. And then they'll get what they want, and there'll be a worse global depression. And they'll say, okay, merge everything into a global government. Have world bonds. And then the Trilateral Commission wrote about this in '75. They planned the whole thing out. It's all public. And then once they've got you really bankrupted, they'll start releasing bioweapons and killing everybody. Everybody will go to watch TV and beg the government, and they'll murder you. I mean, that's how they operate. Oh, boy. Max Keiser joins us right now. And I want to get into all of this news, the $2 billion rogue trade that went on, the mortgage default warnings getting worse, jobless claims. Don't worry, though, they're going to take anybody's kid who's overweight, they're announcing here in the U.S., and shy children at risk of being diagnosed with mental disorder if they don't like talking to the government pedophiles, they're mentally ill. I mean, basically, hell itself is being released. The government has undermined the family. Society's degenerating. Nihilists want to be destroyed, and they will be. Welcome, Max Keiser, to the happy hour.
Yo, Alex Jones. It's Max. I am here.
So, Al Gore says pay your carbon taxes or space aliens will attack, but let's just set that aside, the 24 hours of reality. What do you make of the accelerating global meltdown? I mean, from your perspective, am I right in saying it's very simple? They're holding us hostage again for a new, even more authoritative corporate body through the bureaucracy, and that if we don't give them what they want, they'll create a world depression.
Well, one of your earlier callers said it best, saying that it's about centralizing power. Now, when I was on your show last time, I said that Société Générale, the bank in France, was about to go bankrupt, along with BNP. And that's true. Now, what happened today? We got the news that they're going to create a new, huge European-wide funding facility to refinance the debt of BNP and Société Générale as part of the centralization of power in Europe, as part of the centralization of power around the world. The bank stocks go up 10 or 15% on the day. Everybody says, oh, we're out of the woods. But they don't recognize that underneath this is loss of sovereignty, and it's getting worse.
It is, and they could just create some new bank that doesn't have power and dump the debt into that. A lot of economists I talk to say that's the best way to go, and simply monetize it, but don't put it into circulation. Instead, they're going to slash the benefits and the infrastructure, up the taxes, killing the economy further, and then transfer it to a dictatorial group, which then won't even fix anything, which is good because then they'll hold us hostage again for even more power.
Well, the key to transferring this debt or re-securitizing the debt is to keep interest rates near zero, as they are in the United States, and I guess this is going to be the case in Europe too, which means that people with savings, people with pension accounts continue to get zero on those returns. So this is economic oppression. This is subsidy of the people who have money, who have savings, who have pension accounts, who are underwriting and subsidizing this re-securitization of the bond market so that none of the traffickers in the bonds, the banks at the top, have to suffer any bonus loss. So it's financial oppression through artificially low interest rates. I liken this to financial Jim Crow laws. If you're an average person, you borrow money at 35 or 40%. If you're a white guy working at Goldman Sachs, you borrow money at negative 5%. It's a financial Jim Crow law.
It's a rigged table that's at a 90-degree angle. And we're down here at the bottom with the globalists hanging their rear ends over and doing you-know-what to us. All right, I don't usually use such verbal flourishes, but there's no way to describe all of this as pure garbage. WLS is reporting that if your child is overweight, they're going to put them in a government database in Michigan. We're a few years behind Europe. Then they try to move on to taking your children from you. Here's another one. 3-year-olds branded racist, homophobic, put in government database. Paul Joseph Watson's got this report. And I saw this years ago where at birth in England, it's actually in my film Endgame, mainstream news articles, that you are put in a criminal database at birth if your parents ever committed a crime. So they're calling it genetic crime. And the state of Texas says they put most foster children on antipsychotics because their parents have, quote, bad gene pool. So it's eugenics. And it says over 30,000 British school children, some as young as 3, have had their names registered as a government database and branded racist or homophobic for using playground insults, infractions that could impact their future careers. Yeah, forget juvenile stuff. It's about giving everybody a criminal record or getting everybody in a database. I mean, this is the plan of the authoritarians. I'm going to be talking to Max Keiser about the economy and this huge establishment of this new monetary rulership system in Europe. And what George Soros and others are saying. Soros, embrace mass centralization of power in Europe or face another Great Depression. So that is all coming up today. And then after Max leaves us, we're going to continue with your calls while Max is with us, by the way, for Scott and Tracy and Carl. And well, actually, Carl's up next, and then Scott. We're going to get to all of you coming up here, and I want to read from 1984 as well coming up, because this one section really gets to the philosophy of who we're facing. Now, going back to Max Keiser. Max, recap what we're seeing happen in Europe. Every time the banksters hold us hostage and we give them more power, then things only get worse. I mean, would this just go on forever until all civilization collapsed and they just rolled around in big piles of gold? I mean, what's happening in Europe?
Well, what is missing in Europe was what we saw in the United States during the 2008 debacle, the famous TARP bailout. And this type of facility or lending facility does not exist in Europe. So Merkel and Sarkozy and other leaders are working to get to a similar type of nationalized or federalized balance sheet, lending facility, TARP-like bailout mechanism so that they can pretend and extend and roll these debts out even more than what they currently are. And, this is what's going to mean going forward is that all of the Europe zone will be managed financially out of Berlin. So the First Reich, the Second Reich, and the Third Reich did not succeed in creating a Europe dominated by Germany. But the Fourth Reich, the new federalization of the Eurozone vis-a-vis the banking disaster, will be successful. So Germany becomes a superpower, a reunified Germany, competing with China for domination. The U.S., long gone.
Well, you said it. What do you see then happening in the future? I mean, do the banksters just fully occupy everything, invincible, and they can just rob and steal everything and will become the actual, Lord Rothschild, supreme ruler of Earth, and his vice supreme leader, Lord Rockefeller? I mean, is it just they rule everything, and instead of Bernie Madoff going to jail, they become supreme ruler?
Well, it's debt slavery, and legalized slavery is coming to the world again, coming to America. But, I want to touch base on the UBS rogue trading scandal, because I think this is kind of interesting. Of the last 24 hours, we've had another rogue trader, this time for UBS. They lost $2 billion. And I think it's important for people to understand that the role of the financial mercenary in the global banking system, these are equivalent to the mercenaries that are operating in Iraq or Afghanistan. They are independent contractors, but they work inside these banks like a UBS or a BNP or a Bank of America or Goldman Sachs. And their job, they're given unlimited credit. They're given access to weapons of mass financial destruction like credit default swaps and other leveraged instruments. And the objective is to create chaos, to blow things up, to blow up the Greek economy, to blow up the Irish economy. Because in the chaos, what happens on the financial markets is that volatility means greater premium spread widening for derivatives and options, which is like just pouring money into the coffers of the generals on Wall Street who let these financial mercenaries loose. And once they make a big mistake like this guy caught, and then they just cut him loose and they disavow all knowledge. James Creviel at Societe Generale just a couple of years ago caught doing exactly the same type of thing. He was a financial mercenary for his master, Societe Generale. he made one mistake too many, they cut him loose. A lot of the traders at the World Trade Towers are financial mercenaries. That's why when they do the whole counting up of the casualties of 9/11, I don't include the financial mercenaries. They're just mercenaries, and there were over 1,000 of them. So you can't say that close to 3,000 people died. You have to say there were 2,000 civilians and then 1,000 financial mercenaries. But that's their job. That's what they're trained to do. They're on the front lines of a financial war. So let's not have any pity for these folks, because they're just doing their job as financial mercenaries. And this is really all over the world banking system. You see this happening every single day, and it just transfers wealth to that top 0.1%, the generals of this financial war, and everyone else is getting their wealth stolen from them.
Now, shifting gears to the Middle East, Israel is now pulled out their ambassadors out of Jordan, which was seen as a bastion of stability, and says that, well, their news says that it's hanging by a thread. It's now confirmed that al-Qaeda forces have been given control of Libya, and now NATO says they may have to fight them. How do you see the Middle East tying into this? Because the banksters like to start wars, and people say, well, why? Because it becomes a political distraction, and people tend to go along with more tyranny and more financial austerity if there's a big war going on. What's your view on that, how that fits into the mix here, Max?
Well, the oil is a key component in the oil, cocaine, money laundering trifecta of scams that are around the world, and the Libyan oil is a key component in that. And Muammar Gaddafi, the biggest mistake he made was doing a peace deal with Tony Blair. I mean, that's like letting he thought he was a bad guy. Tony Blair is one of the primo financial terrorists in the world. This is like letting kryptonite into your house. Tony Blair. Once Tony Blair's nose got under the tent, that country was doomed, because he brought in Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. They stole all the sovereign wealth funds. They traded away the country's fortunes. They brought in other bankers, and they're completely screwed up. So now the oil is firmly in control of those who trade the cocaine. We know that we've got Wachovia Bank was caught laundering almost $400 billion of cocaine money. That was the cause of the 2008 credit collapse. Then you have this seized oil in Libya, thanks to the same group, and it all is wrapped nicely with the back-end derivatives trading and credit default swaps amongst our friends on Wall Street and in Europe and around the world. So the oil is one of the three primary commodities that fuel and fund the triangle of financial weaponry and death.
Well, but none of this really matters, the global meltdown. There's an NBA player claiming that he had sex with Sarah Palin, and so that's what's really important here today.
Well, I have news for you. I'm in touch now. You know, they're having elections in Tunisia in a few weeks. One of a close associate of mine is in the running, his party, to become president and prime minister, and I've been offered a role in helping to shape the new economy in Tunisia. So the next time we speak, I may be actually in a role in helping the Tunisian government reshape their economy after this next election, if our party wins. And I think this could be a really important step forward. As you know, I spoke to you from Cairo. I've spoken with you from Beirut, and I've done shows in Qatar, and I know the area well. I've done a lot of work there, and now we're going to take it to the next level by actually helping reshape this economy in Tunisia, depending on the outcome of this election. And then we'll try to attack the global banksters from a new stronghold right there in North Africa.
All right, stay there, Max. I want to look at a couple other areas on the economy. Gold, silver, where do you see that going? I want to get into this $2 billion rogue trade. Is that really what's going on here? A lot of times they'll run a scam and claim it's somebody else. We'll discuss it all on the other side of this quick break with Max Keiser. Then I'm going to jam in some of your phone calls. I'll take some with Max, and I got to read this 1984 quote.